Welcome to today's episode where we delve into the most pressing developments shaping the Eastern Mediterranean and the broader Middle East, focusing on the pivotal role of Turkey in this evolving geopolitical landscape. To help us unpack the complexities and bring clarity, context, and critical thought, we're going to be joined by geopolitical analyst Dr. Yiannos Charalambides, who is head of the Department of International Relations and Strategic Studies of Lidra College, and he's also part of the Law School of Sunderland University, UK in Cyprus. Dr. Charalambides, welcome to Unfiltered with Sam.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I hope to have a fruitful discussion. And of course, it depends on your questions and my answers.
Well, you're going to be the judge of it at the end. I'll wait for your comments at the end. So let's start there.
The people are the judges.
Oh, yes. They will be the ultimate judges. Let's begin. Then by going over the latest internal developments following President Erdoğan's arrest of his main political opponent, Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu. Initially, İmamoğlu's arrest and detention sparked the largest anti-government protests that Turkey had seen in over a decade, with over 2 million participants in Istanbul alone. But it seems that in recent days, the scale of the protests it seems that they've been reduced largely to the Turkish government's response where they've taken measures of banning public gatherings in certain areas, and they've also restricted access to social media platforms. And let's not forget, they've also detained almost 2,000 participants in those protests. So your position, please, Doctor.
I think that it's obvious that Mr. Erdoğan is playing poker now with the head of Mr. İmamoğlu, which means that it is the timing for him, for the Turkish president, to kick out of the system Mr. İmamoğlu because he's afraid of him. He's a politician that he can collect voters from all the areas and all the political parties. Therefore, he's the main opponent for him in the next elections. Of course, Mr. Erdoğan, in accordance with the constitutional that he established, has not the right to be again as the president. But there are many politicians in Turkey supporting that Turkey cannot live without Erdoğan. So either Mr. Erdoğan or one of his party will be the next candidate. He should face Mr. İmamoğlu, and Mr. Erdoğan and his party AKP are afraid that with İmamoğlu against them, they are going to lose the elections, the next elections. And of course, because Mr. Erdoğan, he did many bad things in Turkey, he's afraid that he has two options. The first one is to see the world behind the bars. The second one is that should leave the country in order to avoid his opponents. I should note here something else, that he did, Mr. Erdoğan, what the Kemalists and how the Kemalists behave against him before taking the power. They put him in jail in order to prevent him to take the power. So we have a repetition of history, I think. But it's a matter of zero-sum game, as we explain in international relations, that there is no way out for Mr. Erdoğan. At the same time, I think that he shows all the democratic deficit existing within Turkey and why Turkey, for the time being, has no place in the European Union and I think in the international system as a democratic political system. And we have also underlined that it is a failure of the United States and the European Union because through Mr. Erdoğan and AKP in the recent past, they would propose and introduce in the Arab and Muslim countries a role system. This role system, with Muslim government and democratic political system has failed. That's And of course, there are many innocent people in jail, and this is very pity for the international community, not only for Turkey. But on the other hand, we should be realist. I mean, the foreign policy of Kemalists is similar, even worse, for the neighboring countries. I mean, they are going to follow the same, even worst foreign policy. Why? Because they accuse Mr. Erdogan that he's very soft against the Greeks or the Cypriots or the Israelis. So we should see the whole package and not only the human rights that have been violated within Turkey against the Turkish population, but we should see also the security system in the region suffering by the Turkish neo-Ottoman Empire policy.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And it's very true. People need to understand, especially in the West, not the people in the area who know of the policies and what's happening. And people in the West think that because the opposition, he's not the opposition leader, he's the mayor of Istanbul, but he's part of the opposition party, a leading figure. Because he's arrested this prominent member of the opposition party, that people at the West should support and ask for his release and for him to be allowed to come as a presidential candidate, thinking that if they come to power, the Western people think so, democracy will prevail in Turkey. But it's important, this clarification that you just put out. It's basically the two sides of the same coin. And maybe the side of the Kemalists is even worse, as you say, because they claim that Erdogan is soft on Greece and Turkey.
I should remind you that the Western countries, the European Union, I was working there that time, they prefer Erdogan, believing that they will topple from power the Kemalists, behind of them of which the enemy was hiding. Okay, but now it is proved that the political system in Turkey is a sui generis.
Is a what?
It's a sui generis. Sui generis.
Can you explain that, please, for our viewers?
It's a particular political system. Is a Latin terminology, which means it's enjoy and has its own character, and therefore we should face Turkey and analyze Turkey from the Turkish point of view and never from the Greek, the Cypriot, the German, or the American point of view. So
Okay.
we should get into the system to analyze the system. Most of the time, Western countries, they don't get into the system to analyze the system, the
Correct.
social structure, the political structure, and all these things, which are very important for those who wish to analyze Turkey correctly.
But doctor, it still begs to be clarified, because even though we're witnessing another alarming slide of Turkey into closer to absolute authoritarianism, the international response to this most recent arrest has been at best lukewarm. So what is your position on that?
So I think that the Americans, they don't want to get into the Turkish problems for the time being, because they need Turkey in their architecture in the international system, the new architecture they want to build. The first thing is that the Americans should remove, let's say, Turkey from the Russians' arms. This is the first. The second one is that they need Turkey to prevent China. Therefore, no matter exists for them whether the power is Mr. Erdogan or the Kemalist. What they want is the Turkish army and the Turkish military power. And this is very important in international relations. Therefore, they want Turkey to their new policy. And this is obvious of what's happening now in Syria. They don't want to see in Syria, for example, a conflict between the Israelis and the Turks because they are afraid. They are afraid of what? That the security system they have been built for many years is running the risk of being collapsed, which means the following: that the United States established two pillars of security in the region. The one is Turkey and the other is Israel. Therefore, both countries are indispensable factor for them to hold the system in cohesion. Otherwise, the whole regional system suffering and the American national interests are at risk.
Yes. Well, since you mentioned Syria, let's turn outward then to Turkey's involvement and increasingly assertive role in post-Assad Syria, where Erdogan, uncontested by the international community and even publicly praised by Donald Trump, has unabashedly thrown Turkey's weight behind the former Al-Qaeda and ISIS operative Jolani and his forces and his regime. A move that reflects not only tactical interests but deeper geopolitical intentions. So we'd appreciate your insights, your analysis, particularly considering also the disturbing reports that are coming out of Syria, not on mainstream media but on platforms like X, of ethnic cleansing tactics carried out by the Turkey-backed Jolani forces against the Christian and the Alawite minorities in Syria.
It is obvious, it's acceptable, I think, by all now that Turkey put forward a policy based on the concept of restoring a new Ottoman empire. Therefore, Syria is included as Cyprus and Greece and other areas within the control of all these states. And therefore, this is the timing for the Turks to take over the situation in Syria through the support they offer to the new regime. And they want, in fact, to create a protectorate state. I mean, Syria is changing hands. Few months ago, was under control of Russia, let's say, and Iran. Now, the Israelis got in because they should establish their own security zone suffering from the attacks coming from Syria. They destroyed all the roads from Iran to Israel. And on the other hand, the key and hot issue now is the Kurds. They enjoy so far the support of the United States. So the problem now for the Turks to absolute control Syria is firstly the Israelis and secondly the Turks. But it is a step further for what they bear in mind, which means to restore the new Ottoman Empire, which is a very risky game for them because they create enemies, and of course for the neighboring countries. This is
very interesting. So let's take a look then. Let's take a look at Turkey's neo-Ottoman aspirations expressed through the lens of its blue homeland doctrine, a strategy that is aiming at ultimately redrawing the lines of influence and borders, maritime and land, across the Eastern Mediterranean and beyond. Could you help us, Doctor, shed light on this doctrine? Because it remains largely unfamiliar to Western audiences. And if you could explain also if it should be a matter of serious concern.
Of course, it is what we call revisionist strategy and policy, which means that Turkey attempt to change its relations with neighboring countries on the level of the legal system and the political system, which means to change the borders. And so far, Cyprus is under Turkish occupation, and therefore, through the negotiations, attempt to create a confederation through a federation in order to absolute control the whole island, which means that Turkey wants to legalize the illegal fait accompli created in 1974 when the Turkish troops invaded Cyprus, and then to legalize the existing illegal division of the island. This is the first step. The second step is that Turkey put in question the territorial water borders with Greece, and now claiming for the demilitarization of the island, and want to come up to the 45th to divide ancient Greece, ancient sea, in order
The
to
Aegean Sea.
impose
Yes.
the Aegean Sea, sorry, in order to impose its revisionist policy, which means a double division of the Aegean Sea and division of Cyprus. And this is a strategic plan starting from the Black Sea up to the Mediterranean Sea. Why? Because Turkey wants to see itself as what? As a regional power. And the regional power should control the sea roads and the air roads. And Cyprus is very important. And the gate of the Aegean Sea, which means where are the gates of the Aegean Sea?
Aegean Sea.
Crete, Aegean Sea, sorry. Crete,
Crete, yes.
Cassos, and Rhodos.
And Rhodes.
Yes, and Rhodes. This is where the geopolitical game now is focused.
Crete, Cassos, and Rhodos.
Rhodos, yes, because they want to isolate Cyprus from Greece.
Yes.
It's very important for strategic reasons.
Yes. Isn't there the agreement that went and made with the Libyan government? Does that have something to do with this? Could you explain that to our viewers, please?
Of course, because it is about the delineation of the legal rights that the special sovereign rights of a state in the sea, in accordance with the international law. So Turkey put in question the exclusive economic zone of Greece. In international law, we have two legal rights for the coastal states. The one is the territorial water sovereign rights, up to 12 nautical miles, and the exclusive economic zone, which can extend up to 200 nautical miles. Therefore, Turkey now puts in question the sovereign rights of Greece in the context of what? In the context of its revisionist strategy, which means that put in question the legal sovereign rights of Greece. This is a similar policy adopted by Turkey in the case of Cyprus. Cyprus cannot exploit its national resources, I mean gas and oil, because it is under a casus belli, which means if we try as Cypriots to exploit our national resources, we are going to face the anger of Turkish war machine.
Yes. And why should this be a matter of serious concern to the whole world and not just the countries affected?
Because if you see the geopolitical position of Cyprus and Greece, it is the main sea roads.
Sea routes.
Sea roads, yes, from Suez to towards Turkish coast, to Constantinople through
Yes.
Aegean Sea, outside Libya to Gibraltar. So all the area is passing through Cyprus and Greece. So if Turkey, at the end of the day, achieves to control all these sea roads, then it will consolidate its military and commercial power in the region. And therefore, it will be indispensable factor for the Americans, the Europeans, the Russians, and the Chinese, which are coming
They are.
very furious in the international system.
So it's not just military and economic consolidation, which you just mentioned,
No, it's
but
geopolitics.
it's geopolitical, and also having access to the oil and gas reserves of this part of the world, of the Eastern Mediterranean, which are largely still untapped. They are, the analysts are saying they are the largest oil and gas in the world, oil and gas reserves in the world.
We don't know,
possibly.
but we hope to be.
Okay.
To be, but you cannot control your national resources unless you enjoy military power. So in international, the real school in international relations is teaching us that international law goes hand in hand with military and economic power. Now, technology is very important. Artificial intelligence, for example, even the battlefield changes now, and this is obvious in two wars: the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza. That it is two battlefields that the Western countries and Russia and Israelis use artificial intelligence weapons. So technology is one of the main power for a state which wishes to be a regional power. This is why Turkey established a huge military industry. It is in the context of its imperialistic, let's say, policy, because it's also established military bases in Qatar, in Somalia, which is very important regions.
Yes.
And therefore, he can play and serve its own national interest.
Its tentacles, their tentacles are everywhere. It's in the Somalia, in Sudan, in Libya, in
Somalia,
Qatar,
Libya,
in the Caucasus,
Qatar,
in the
Albania,
yes, in Albania, Azerbaijan, everywhere.
Azerbaijan. So
yes,
it is a regional power because Turkey invested in military technology, and military technology, you don't lose your money, but on the contrary, you invest on your national security. And if you have a dream such as Mr. Erdogan, which is a nightmare, of course, for other countries, then you consider that it is a huge investment.
I had read in the summer that his target is by 2050 to become completely militarily self-sufficient and no longer depend on Russians providing him with arms or the US providing him with arms. And it's already been proven because they are one of the biggest and best manufacturers already in the drone industry, military drone industry.
When he took the power, he came in power, he was suffering because he depended on the Americans and the Western countries. Now it is about 80% independent, and he goes through. And I know that he knows how to play the card in international arena, let's say, because you cannot be truly independent unless you can produce and your own weapons, and unless you have a strong economy.
Yes.
This is, and of course, the technology, and he took leaps, not steps, on this area. Erdoğan.
Exactly. Dr. Charalambides, thank you. Thank you very much for your informative and insightful analysis, which begins to shed much needed clarity and context to our loyal and valued viewers on Turkey's role, a subject largely overlooked and underanalyzed by Western mainstream media. Thank you for being on
I hope
Unfiltered
that your audience is going to absorb all these informations
Yes.
offered to them to make their mind up, to think
Yes.
about our region, which is very volatile region, but we hope to find the path for peace and stability.
Yes. Yes. True.
Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you for
invitation.
More than welcome. Glad to have you.